Nerfless nerf herders, listen up! Welcome back to the Captain's Commentaries. I am Captain Xavier, and these are my commentaries. As promised, we are going to be covering HVZ squad tactics today. They'll also work for Nerf wars if you're in some kind of an urban environment, or really any kind of squad stuff. This is mostly drawn from either private security stuff, police stuff, military stuff. Similar concepts, slightly adapted for Nerf and HVZ. The big differences in what you're going to see in HVZ as compared to real life or Nerf is that unlike those applications where you're more concerned about being shot at, in HVZ you're more worried about being tagged. And so you're not going to do things like hug walls of buildings because it provides more cover, or stay close to other forms of cover. You're actually going to want to avoid cover as much because that's where the zombies hide. And you're not worried about, long-range shots coming in or snipers or those sorts of things. For Nerf wars, of course, those do become a concern, and you're going to want to make sure that you have as much cover as possible. But for HVZ, you're going to want to stay away from cover, and you're going to want to definitely check all your cover. And that is something that we're going to cover in some of the early parts of this video. We are going to also discuss a little bit more, bring up again the concept that you can have more diversity in your loadouts. You can have specific people who have specific loadouts as opposed to the more generic loadout that I advised for civilian players. For squad players, you can then have dedicated riflemen, dedicated long arms, dedicated heavy firepower, someone whose sole purpose is to reload. Those sorts of things you can have. But let's get into some of the actual squad movements, squad tactics, how you cover each other, and that sort of thing. With some examples. Hopefully someday I will have the opportunity to do these a little more in-depth. This is kind of a brief overview while we were filming some other stuff. We had a few minutes, so we got these because John wanted to be involved and he's getting deployed, so this was his opportunity to help out with that. I may do a more in-depth one. We did discuss some more in-depth topics that we didn't get to cover in this video, but let's take a look at those. Hopefully they make some sort of sense. So, arguably the most important thing about squad tactics, and the one that I see players get wrong the most, is covering your sector of the field. So however many people you have in your squad, you should be covering that fraction of the field. So if there's 2 people, he's covering 50%, and I'm covering 50%. If you have 3 people, you each cover a third. 4 people, you each cover a quarter. When you're in large groups, your sector might be very, very small. And the reason it's important to cover your sector and not try to cover other people's sector is otherwise something like this happens. Incoming Zeds! Where? Gotcha! I have seen 5 zombies take out 80 people because 4 zombies came at them and all 80 people turned, and the other zombie hit them from behind and got almost all of them, and then the next wave just completely annihilated them. You need to have the discipline to do this. Crap. Incoming Zeds! The trick is to communicate. And it really does come down to a great deal of trust. I need to trust him that he will cover my back so that I don't worry about what's going on in his sector, and he doesn't worry what's going on in my sector. And that kind of trust comes from training and practice and knowing that he knows what he's doing. So this is something you should drill. Also, beware of vicious hounds that will savage you. This is very important. So, watch your sector. Know what your sector is. Communicate what's going on in your sector so that they know about it. If you need help because you're getting hit by too hard, you communicate that so that they can redistribute the squads. If one person is going to shift groups, he says shifting sections and would come over, and the other 2 guys would then, if there were more people, would cover a larger swath so that we could increase the firepower in this section. The next topic we're going to discuss is reloading. When you are in fact switching magazines out, you need to communicate to your squad that you're doing this because you are no longer effective and your sector is no longer covered. So you inform your squad that you are reloading. Whoever your partner in the squad is will inform you that they are now covering your sector, and then as soon as you are reloaded, you will say up, and then you can go back on. And it should be very smooth and seamless, and it shouldn't take long. But if you've got a wily zombie, it may not take them long when you're out. So if I'm covering my sector and I'm shooting, reloading! Covering, up! So in the second that I was down, if he didn't know to cover my sector, the zombie could get me. because there's really little I can do. So, communication, it's key. Alright, let's talk about movement. To leave a building that you don't know what's on the outside, because we don't have windows or whatnot, and even if you do, you should follow this technique. You do a technique that's called stacking the door. We literally stack up behind each other. The first person goes out, and you know beforehand who's going which direction. Because I'm left-handed, I'm better at covering a right exit. He's right-handed, he's better at covering the right exit. So I'm going right, he's going left, and again, we worry about our sectors. There could be a zombie on the far side of this door. I'm trusting him to cover me when he comes out.
It's my job.
That is his job, not my job. I can't cover my own back. So this is how it works. Go. Similar concept to clearing a doorway. When you go around any kind of a corner or there's anywhere with cover, communicate who's covering which side, who's covering which corner, so that you don't end up with a blind spot because nobody realized what they were doing. And a lot of that is just paying attention, and again with drill, you know, it'd be it's just a matter of a hand signal. So this is my signal for John, you're checking this corner when we go that way, so. Now if you have a wide enough area that you can both look in both directions at the same time, great. Sometimes there just isn't enough room for that, and you're gonna have to pick a direction to check and have your squad mate cover the other direction. So in this case, I'm gonna go left and we'll see what ends up happening, so. Lovely.
Yeah.
Again, loads of communication. All right. An awful lot of HVZ, especially on the big campuses, is walking around. It's not all action. But you still need to be aware of what's going on. You need to know who's in charge of what part. When you're in a large enough group, I like to actually go in some kind of a staggered column, because it's more organized, you've got more firepower, you're not in each other's way. It's easy to go from that to a circular formation to defend from. And the person at the back needs to know that they're at the back and that it's their job to occasionally do a crazy Ivan and check the squad 6. So, there's zombies around. Hold up, John, you're on 6. Now the advantage of having a squad like this is you can diversify your loadouts more. In the civilian loadout, I said you should go with something, non-fully automatic, because you're just going to run out of ammunition, and you don't want something too low rate of fire, but not too high rate. You needed to be in the middle because you were going to be all by yourself. In a squad, you don't have that limitation, so you can have riflemen, long range, as well as heavy gunners, because we're all supporting each other. And the general formation that you're going to have is that the riflemen are going to be the ones up in front, because we've got, a reliable rate of fire, we've got relatively good capacity, followed then by the heavy gunners, who are just laying down ridiculous amounts of fire. They'd be your Prometheus, your Nemesis, your whatever has super high rates of fire, and then your long range towards the back, because they have a very slow rate of fire and they need to be covered while they're, picking their targets. You then probably have, again, a rifleman towards the back that is covering the back. That's supposed to happen. Yep. It's a feature.
I cover you.
Ah! Free barrel!
Cover me while I'm fixing my gun. It's a Vulcan, it works fine.
Ah!
This is how we die.
So when you get to the point where you're in a fixed location, the good old last stand that most HVZs end up with, or even when you're moving between locations and you have a moment, there's a lull in the combat, whoever is the leader should take a moment and check the squad. And really what you're looking for in HVZ, since we don't really have real injuries, is the status of their blaster and the status of their ammunition. And this is another thing that you would train beforehand, so they would know when I come up and just go, condition.
Great.
I know that he doesn't have any problems. If I come over to here and go, condition.
We're almost empty.
Good to know.
Felt.
Yeah.
Jammed. Help.
Because there may be one side of the squad is being hit really heavy and the other side isn't, and so this side's running low on ammunition and that side isn't. So you'd be able to know they're running low on ammunition. I might pull a magazine off of him and hand it to him. Or if we have someone who's the dedicated ammo carrier, I'd know reload him, reload them.
Any spare belts?
I got the one holding my pants up. I don't think you want that.
I don't think that'll feed well.
I have one
Nobody-
too, but my pants will fall if I give it to you.
We don't want that. We have a problem.
Uh,
So the key thing about squads is that you need a lot of communication, which requires training, because you need to make your communication one word or less. And by less, I mean hand signals or grunts or things like that. So I don't want to come up behind him and go, "Hey, John, do you have enough bullets? I think I don't want you running out of ammunition. Are you good? Are you good? Are you good?" It needs to be something just as simple as I said condition, and he knows what I mean. And he... Condition. Ah! They're all zombies! I knew it! Run away! Now, every once in a while you are going to run into a situation that, as good as your squad is, you can't handle it. So if there's 5 of you and 120 zombies come around the corner, which I have seen happen, you are not going to want to hold your ground. You also are not going to want to rout. Just turn away and run. There's a couple of options that you can do. You can do what is simply referred to as a fighting retreat, where we are all firing, but we are slowly, steadily moving backwards. And of course, someone is occasionally checking the 6, because this would be a great time for someone to hit us from behind.
Yeah, like a Brett zone.
If you need to retreat in a hurry, you can do a set and covering formation. So I would say set, moving, set, moving. So you always have one person who is holding their ground while everyone else runs, and they will communicate what's going on. If the horde is moving in, if they need you to just run, they could then stand their ground and try to kill as many and die valiantly. I don't recommend that. People willing to die for a cause have a tendency to. I prefer to have people who are willing to live for a cause.
yeah.
So as I said over and over in all of those clips, the key to a successful squad is communication and trust, both of which come from training. You need to actually sit down with your squad and work out exactly what your commands are, what your calls are, what your responses are, so that there is no ambiguity. When somebody requests information, you know exactly what to say, so that the information is communicated as cleanly and as succinctly as possible, so that there is no confusion and they know exactly what you're saying with the fewest number of words possible. And that is something that you need to practice, so that you know exactly what you need to ask and exactly what your response needs to be. You also need to work out your specific roles in the squad, so that you don't have to constantly have somebody telling people what to do. They should already know what their job is in most situations. Only when situations start to get really hairy, which they will do, will whoever's in charge need to actually direct people, or should need to direct people. And things like reloading and covering your sector and covering someone else's sector and covering someone while they're reloading. That is all something that you need to practice, that you need to drill, that you need to be able to do smoothly and fluidly and know whose job it is, when they need to do it, when you need to call for it, remembering to call for it. How to move from one formation into another formation. That is something that needs to be practiced and drilled. This is why armies do drill, so that it becomes second nature, so you don't have to spend time thinking about it, you just do it. And the benefits of that kind of training, of that kind of discipline, of that kind of organization, it doesn't just double your fighting force, it can increase it by an order of magnitude. I have seen 5 men take on 100 and win because they knew what they were doing. I have seen 100 people lose to 5 because they didn't know what they were doing. So you really need, if you really want to be an effective squad and you really want to get into that level of roleplay and that level of effectiveness, you should work on it. And hopefully this will give you some idea of the kinds of things that you need to look at. These are also, like I said, very generic options. It will depend greatly on the battlefield that you're on. So you should do your drill, if at all possible, where you're going to be fighting, so that you know avenues of escape, avenues of bottleneck, how to get from one place to another, how to cut people off, how to, shortcuts, long cuts, unknown paths, common paths. All those sorts of things are things that, again, require drill and practice and training and research and all of that. So hopefully anybody who is going to be in my squad at Ragnar Oktoberfest will watch this video and try to at least glean as much of it as possible. Obviously, we won't have the opportunity to actually drill before the event, but if you have at least the basics covered, it should be easy enough to give you some basic instruction and try to whip you into some kind of a squad for that event. It should be a really interesting event, and I'm hoping it goes really well for everyone involved. So, there you have it. There are my comments on how to be an effective HVZ squad. Let me know what you guys think, if you think there's stuff that I've glaringly missed or completely got wrong, or ideas you have, or things that have worked for you or haven't worked for you. Go ahead and put that sort of stuff down in the comments. There will probably be an addendum to this at some point in the future with additional stuff or clarifications or more in-depth views on certain concepts in future commentaries. But for now, here's the basic overview. I hope it's helpful. Thank you guys for watching. They're the one doing most of the shooting, and they may now be low on ammunition, and you may want... Well, I can't have no nice things anymore. I let you touch my stuff.
We're both down. Forget us. Go on.
Sometimes you just need to cut the weak loose and go on your own.
We go around that way.
The most important part is communication. I'm talking here. Run for it!